Hello and welcome to Silver Age Silver Screen, the podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Yeah, and Riley, today we are talking about a direct-to-DVD animated movie based on comic books, albeit one that won an Emmy. Actually, no, it was just nominated, but was nominated for an Emmy.
Based on the graphic novel by Darwin Cook. This week we are reviewing Justice League: The New Frontier, released in 2008.
You know, before we get into this film, I think the reason why we decided to do it is because it's a really interesting idea for a film. DC: The New Frontier, the book that this is based off, it's about the 50s. Both what was going on in America at the time and what was going on in comics. Because if you don't know, the comic industry went through massive changes in the mid-50s, and the exact reasons for it are long and complicated, but the short story is DC canceled most of their books and a few years later rebooted them just with completely different heroes under the mantle. For instance, Jay Garrick, the Flash of the Golden Age, was replaced with Wally West, who has different costume, different name, different villains, but the same powers. And this movie is, or at least it tries to be, about why that change happened, why it went from Golden Age comics to Silver Age comics, but not because of, editorial mandate, but because of what was going on in the world at the time with, the Red Scare and the Korean War and the space race, and that's a really interesting idea.
The story takes place during the mid to late 1950s in a post-Korean War America, where there's a lot of civil, social, and political change in the air. The story is about how the heroes of the DC universe were adjusted to that within the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have not read the graphic novel, which was released in 2004. To be honest with you, I haven't done any research about it. I'm looking at this film as objectively as possible. Not as a graphic novel, not as a book, just how it is as a film. So that's where my perspective is coming from. Another thing, right out the gate that I noticed, this film has a pretty interesting cast. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris from How I Met Your Mother fame and a bunch of other movies and shows.
Yeah, he plays the Flash. David Boreanaz, who was Angel on Buffy and the spin-off, Angel, he plays Hal Jordan. Lucy Lawless, who was Xena, Warrior Princess, plays Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Kyle MacLachlan plays Superman. Alan Ritchson, who most of you would probably recognize from the TV shows Titans, where he plays Hawk, or Blue Mountain State, or a show that I loved when it was airing was called Blood Drive. Shout out to any of you who remember that show or knew what the hell that show was. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel a couple years back. Also in the cast is Joe Mantegna from Criminal Minds and Keith David. So it has a pretty decent cast. And Alan Ritchson voiced Aquaman.
Well, he had a line.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
You built him up ooh, it features this actor. He has one line. But no, this film has a good cast.
Yeah.
David Boreanaz
Yes.
just steals the show in this.
Oh, yeah. To be honest with you, that is actually what I was thinking. I went into it oh yeah, I recognize this guy. He was also the guy, or Alan Ritchson. He was in an episode of Black Mirror about the rating people episode.
Oh, yeah.
The wedding. Yeah, that guy, the gay fiance. So I was oh, he's the guy, he's the actor that is in most of the shows that I've seen.
Oh shit, he played Raphael in
Yeah, that too.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Michael Bay movies, and he was in Laser Team. And again, he's not really in this movie. Why are we focusing on him?
Well, my point is, what I'm saying, he was the actor I knew the most going into it, apart from Neil Patrick Harris, of course. And I'm oh, cool, he's going to be in this. He has one line as Aquaman. I don't know, this is just something funny I thought of.
So first off, opening scene of this, we get a man flipping through a book full of drawings, like describing the backstory of the film's main villain, later named the Center, describing this being from dinosaur times that was buried in Earth by the asteroid strike, this ancient, inhuman, hyper-intelligent, powerful monster, but has been watching humanity as they grow eviler and more dangerous. And now, upon the eve of Armageddon, as the Cold War is heating up and we are starting to see these massive nuclear arsenals, humanity's destruction has come. And then the guy reading the book kills himself because this is a film that aired on Cartoon Network. I don't know why that's so funny to me, that this film premiered on Cartoon Network and it opens with a man committing suicide.
Yeah, overall, there's a lot more mature themes and events that happen in this film. Like, there's a part later on where Martian Manhunter rips a pterodactyl in half, and there is blood. At one point, a little bit earlier on in the film, you see what is essentially sex trafficking, or sexual slavery. And I'm like, God damn, this is for kids? After that starts a title sequence that's very much so reminiscent of 50s and 60s era television and movies and stuff like that.
And it's a pretty good title sequence because it shows a lot of elements of the backstory that this film couldn't really go into. Like, it shows how Barry Allen got his powers, and also it shows, in a very Watchmen-esque thing, the Golden Age heroes being forced into hiding. Honestly, this story has a lot of Watchmen vibes to it.
Right. I mean, obviously, this was written after Watchmen came out, but yes, both cover similar themes, you know? Like, it's all about the mid-20th century, discusses a lot of, like, the ethics of superheroes and how they're used in their relationship to the government. There is a lot of parallels, and I think that from there, getting into it, we pick up with Hal Jordan, who's a pilot in the Korean War, and radio announcer Lois Lane radios to all the American troops that Korea and America have reached an agreement and are now declaring a ceasefire.
Yay! MASH is over now.
So Hal and his friend are flying their planes when they are attacked by enemy planes. And in order to save his friend's life, Hal takes out the other planes not by shooting at them, but by juking them out to make them fly into each other. And in doing so, he gets shot down and crashes his plane on the ground. He safely lands in an enemy trench where he is forced to shoot and kill an enemy soldier at point blank range.
Because this movie has a very R-rated first 5 minutes.
It cuts to the Gotham City Observatory, where a scientist is lying on the ground, presumably dying, with a weird, bizarre alien creature standing above him. For those of you who understand this, that is the origin story of pre-New 52 founding Justice League member Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, he was accidentally teleported to Earth by a human scientist, and then he just decided to become a 1950s detective.
Yeah, because that's what you do.
Because, I mean, what else are you gonna do when you get teleported to Earth and you're an alien shapeshifter and the guy who teleported you there just died of a heart attack?
We've all been there. We've all been there. What was very interesting to me upon watching this film does jump around a lot, and I have more to say about that later on. But what was interesting to me because this is my first time watching it, it struck me that this film predominantly follows the Martian Manhunter and Hal Jordan Green Lantern. I love both those characters. So it's not just the fact that the film focuses on them, it's the fact that of the founding Justice League members, these are the two that really don't get much love in the mainstream media. I could go to, say, my dad or my sister, who they love superheroes too, just like me. I'm not talking down about them, obviously, but they don't know as much about me. I'm not trying to flex on them, but they don't know as much about comic books as I do. They just know the movies, you know? If I go to my dad or my sister, I go like, hey, who are these? And they're like, oh yeah, that's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Aquaman. I would venture a guess as to say they could not name Green Lantern or Martian Manhunter off the top of their
I
heads.
mean, Green Lantern, maybe. He had the, movie with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
And all damn jokes on to Big Bang Theory.
the way I see it, there's not as much love or appreciation or even recognition of these two characters. So it was a really nice breath of fresh air to see a Justice League film that didn't predominantly focus on Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman.
That is both a strength of this film and a flaw, and we'll get into it as it goes on, but this film's first half, like you said, jumps around a lot. I will say, I appreciate what this film is doing, like tying together the stories of a bunch of different heroes until it culminates in something good. I will say, it does take some time to get its wheels spinning, just like because it's cutting between so many different characters. It kind of gets a bit dull in the first half.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, it does jump around a lot, and I do think that is a weakness of the film. It doesn't really sit at one point, because just the pacing of this film is really off. The film begins in 1953 and it ends in 1960, so 7 years have passed in total. I never would have guessed that.
Shit, does it?
Yeah.
I thought I was under the assumption that this was all taking place in 1954 or 55, right after the Korean War.
At the end, when Jimmy Olsen takes a photo of the heroes that saved the day, spoiler alert, the newspaper says 1960.
Okay, well, yeah, this film does not convey that passage of time much at all.
Fitting in with the jumping around, it goes from Gotham in 1953 to Indochina in 1954, where Superman travels to a hut where Wonder Woman is celebrating with a group of women that she freed from sex slavery. It doesn't say sex slaves, but
I'm pretty sure she says, imprisoned to have their way with them or something like that.
Yeah, something to that effect. It's like, god damn, this is for kids.
One day came over a bunch of soldiers with women caged up and broke the women free and gave them a bunch of guns and told them, do what you want. And they did some kind of justified murder. And Superman kind of scolds her on that and brings up the fact that, hey, we can't do this. We have to play nice and go by the rules or the US government will shut us down. And he reveals that at this point, the only superheroes left are him and Wonder Woman, plus Batman, who's working as a vigilante. And after that conversation, Wonder Woman just goes back to Themyscira. The age of superheroes is mostly over.
It's interesting because you can definitely see both of their points of view. Clearly Wonder Woman is doing the right thing, obviously. But Superman, being the eternal stick in the mud, as he always is, always working for the government and that stuff, you can understand where he's coming from. Look, people are afraid of us. We are literal gods. When we start doing whatever we want, that's when they're going to get afraid. That's when they're going to resort to desperate measures, you know? It was a very interesting interaction they had.
And a bit after it, Superman has a scene where he discusses this stuff with Lois Lane, and he shows up in a few action scenes after that. But Superman's barely in this.
Yes.
And I'm gonna say something. I think that's a bit of a mistake. A lot of the complaints I'm gonna have for this film boil down to the fact that this is a 75-minute film. It's very short, and there are things that needed more time to focus on. Superman's role as trying to be this symbol of heroism when all the other heroes are being forced out and having to juggle what it means to be a representative of the American way and how to be a good person when the country is descending into madness and paranoia and fear-mongering. That's a really interesting story, and maybe it's told better in the book, but they really don't do much with Superman in this movie, and I think that's a bit of a failure. Like I said, it is cool to see a film that focuses on Hal Jordan and Martian Manhunter, but it comes at the expense of pretty much every superhero in this movie, except for kind of the Flash, really not having much of an arc or really any screen time of note.
I completely agree with you. That was one of the other weaknesses I had with it. Like I said, when the film started, I felt a breath of fresh air when it's mainly focused on Martian Manhunter and Hal Jordan. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That is mostly focusing on them in this part. Superman, Wonder Woman, they're a little off to the side a little bit, but don't worry, they're going to be a big part in it. But as the film goes on, it became very apparent to me, like, okay, so Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, half of the Justice League, they're just completely sidelined. As much as I do like John Jones and Hal Jordan, Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern respectively, arguably Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are the most important members of the Justice League. They're the Trinity, meaning like they're the greatest heroes in the DC universe. To see them completely getting pushed to the side for the entire film is kind of disappointing. I mean, Batman doesn't appear until like 22 minutes into the movie.
I mean, that doesn't sound bad, but again, that's a third of the film's length because it's very, very short.
We'll get into it more and more, but like they set up a pretty interesting subplot with Batman. And it just, after that one scene, there's like maybe one other scene, and then that subplot is completely dropped.
Yeah.
At the end, Superman gives this monologue where he talks about his character motivation and what he's learned in this entire story. It has all to do with government persecution and how where power exists in relation to the government and its people. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, apart from maybe a couple offhanded comments throughout the film, this was not set up at all. It's just something they're saying happened that we didn't see.
After Supes and Wundy have their discussion of ethics and Wonder Woman decides, man, I'm going to go away for a few years, we get a scene of Martian Manhunter in an apartment watching TV and shape-shifting into the characters he sees, including Bugs Bunny. Side note, that sets up a really interesting universe. What if Martian Manhunter, instead of being a 1950s detective, decided to just be Bugs Bunny? I feel like that would be terrifying to criminals.
And I love the fact that in all these animated DC movies, they always try to put in Bugs Bunny somehow.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of do the inverse. Like, I remember, what was it? I think it was called the Looney Tunes show. It had an episode where Bugs just reveals that he's Batman.
Yeah.
And DC did like a couple issues, and we're way off track at this point.
Absolutely.
Where they were crossovers between Looney Tunes and the Justice League. Like, there was one that I read that was really, really good. It was Elmer Fudd teams up with Batman, and it was dark and realistic and insanely well written.
I need to check that out.
Yeah, but anyway, we get some good character building for Martian Manhunter as he tries to learn about human society.
Mm-hmm.
And then, cut to the Flash, saving his girlfriend in Las Vegas and taking out Captain Cold. And it's actually a pretty cool scene. Captain Cold puts a bunch of bombs around the city and says, Flash, if you don't get all 6 bombs, Las Vegas will be destroyed. And now I'm gonna run away. And Flash gets all 5 bombs, but realizes, wait, where's the 6th? Oh, there isn't a 6th. He made that up to distract me. And then he rewires Captain Cold's freeze ray so it blows up on him.
Yeah.
And, it's pretty cool. It is tonally completely different from every other scene in the movie.
Right.
But it's a pretty cool scene in isolation.
The Flash in general, he's a more lighthearted, comedic presence in the Justice League. His scenes are going to be a bit more humorous. And it was also in that scene that
Captain Cold gives some ominous warnings to the Flash while being psychically possessed by the film's villain, which is a really creepy scene.
Hal and his friend Ace, they drive to a restaurant in Nevada where he has a dinner with Carol Ferris, who is his girlfriend in the comics. She's like the daughter of this CEO who's about to take over her dad's company, I think, or government, whatever. I'm saying I don't know a lot. I watched this movie on Saturday. We're recording this, Tuesday? So it's been a few days. Forgive me.
To be fair, I'm also a bit hazy on plot details because For reasons that are no one in this recording's fault, especially not mine, this recording may have been delayed from when we normally record things, so things are a bit fuzzy.
Technical problems. Computers are bitches. You know, you guys know.
It's a scene where Hal, interviews and, gets a job at Ferris Air, which is this experimental aviation agency. And also, he reveals that A, he's a pacifist, and B, he spent some time in a psych ward following the Korean War.
You see, those are the details I was talking about that I forgot in the last few days. Those are very important parts of this film.
Hey, I can edit out when you get details wrong.
Please do.
I mean, I do that for myself.
Yeah. That's what editing's for. Making ourselves look good.
Yeah. After that, Martian Manhunter, now working as a police detective, stumbles onto this child kidnapping by this weird doomsday cult, worshipping this powerful being that possessed Captain Cold back in Las Vegas and was in the beginning of the film. And while he's there, rescuing this kid from a bunch of cultists trying to sacrifice him, Batman bursts in, and it is Golden Age Batman with the pointy ears and the purple gloves.
Damn right. He is here to kick all their asses.
Together, they beat up the cultists and exchange notes on the case.
Right.
Later, Batman breaks into Martian Manhunter's apartment and basically tells him that he doesn't need his help on the case because Batman is the world's greatest detective. Also, he says the best line.
Oh my god.
I have an $80,000 sliver of kryptonite to kill the one in Metropolis. All I need to take you out is a 10-cent box of matches.
Yeah. When I was watching this movie and he said that line, I out loud said, God damn, Batman. Holy shit. Because, for those of you who aren't aware, Martian Manhunter's weakness is fire. Because he's from the planet Mars, obviously, and he watched it's left unclear, as far as I know, it's left unclear whether that weakness is entirely physical or it's just psychological. The reason why his weakness is fire is because he watched his wife, his children, everyone in his town, everyone he's ever known and loved, burn alive. It's never, as far as I know, never explicitly stated whether or not it's a physical weakness or just a psychological one because of the trauma he experienced because of fire. But it's when he's saving the kid from the cult, a fire ignites, and he stands in front of it in horror. That's when Batman learns that this man's weakness is fire.
Yeah.
And when he's in Martian Manhunter's apartment, he tells him, he's like, look, I know you're not human. I don't know what you are, but I know you're not human. And I know your weakness is fire. All I need is a penny for a book of matches. Damn!
And that never comes up again.
No, never. It's just dropped. And the whole cult thing, that was the subplot I was talking about. It's established Batman is tracking down this cult who are worshiping the villain of the movie, the Center. And I will talk about the Center a little bit later. But he is tracking this cult down, and he's even mentions how he's investigating it in other countries. How he said, he's like, at first I thought this was the Russians, but the commies are having trouble with it too. In those scenes, it establishes Batman's dealing with a cult following the villain, which is an interesting subplot, but it doesn't go anywhere after that. It's just dropped.
Yeah, the best thing I can say about this film is that it has really good ideas.
Right, exactly. And maybe, we don't know, we haven't read the graphic novel, but maybe it's explored more in there. But there's a lot of interesting things brought up that just don't go very far past that scene where it takes place.
Speaking of interesting things that don't really get fleshed up, the plotline about superheroes being forced into hiding by McCarthyism. The government tries to capture Flash. He escapes from them but decides to stop being a superhero. And it's cool, and it would be a really interesting thing, but this is one of 3 scenes with the Flash, so it doesn't have much impact.
Yeah, Flash goes on the news and publicly states that he is no longer going to be a superhero. Also, the scene takes place in a bar where John Jones, Martian Manhunter, is watching watching the news, watching that happen, and he also witnesses news footage of the superhero John Wilson, who goes by, I believe, John Henry. That's his superhero alter ego.
Yeah, like the folktale dude who, like, died of exhaustion after fighting a robot. That's how that story goes.
John Wilson in this story was an African American superhero who was a one-man army against the KKK, and he was killed in battle. And I was actually surprised to find out that they haven't done anything with this character beyond this one story.
Yeah, from a little bit of research, apparently it goes much more in depth on this character, a black superhero fighting against the KKK and eventually getting murdered because of it, and no one really cares, and that really drives Martian Manhunter to apathy. But that plotline isn't really fully explored at all in this film.
Not at all.
Aside from the scene where it's mentioned that he was killed.
That would be a character I'd like to see come back. I think that'd be an interesting story.
You know, the thing about this film is it was just so long already that they couldn't fit in that subplot. I mean, this film, there's no way this film had a big enough budget to be feature length. I get it, but it's just disappointing that there are so many good ideas in this film and none of them are given time to be fully explored.
I haven't seen all of the DC animated movies, but from what I can tell, that seems to be a reoccurring problem with a good majority of them. They aren't given enough time and money to make them the best they possibly can be in order to properly adapt these storylines and do them well and make them exceptional. They used to make like 2 or 3 of them a year, but then 2014, 2015, they started making 4 movies a year, and they're all being made by similar creative teams. At a point, you gotta realize, are you stretching yourself too thin when it comes to making these movies the best they can be? Are you just sort of getting them out there just for the sake of getting them out there? And because you're doing that, they're not the greatest quality films overall. Not saying all of them are trash, just saying they could be a lot better if you just gave them the right time and budget to do it properly. And this film, though separate from those, still has those problems. I just felt like they didn't have enough time. They probably didn't even have enough budget. I would venture a guess, since it was premiering on Cartoon Network, that doesn't really sound to me like something that they would shove millions of dollars to, you know? They'd be like, all right, it's in production, let's get it out. That's my biggest problem.
Animation is expensive. Look, I get why this film is short and doesn't have the time to explore things, but that doesn't mean it's not disappointing.
Animation is very expensive. Don't get me wrong, I understand that.
Anyway, back in the plotline that actually gets screen time, Hal Jordan gets a job at Ferris Air, a state-of-the-art experimental aircraft company, and learns that they're planning a mission to Mars, and he begins his training. Also, he meets Rick Flag. You know that guy. He's in the Suicide Squad movies. He's a dick in this one too. But also, he meets King Faraday, a secret agent who has the coolest name ever. And also, he has this black and white Yoshikage Kira-ass hair. There's a scene where Martian Manhunter, in his cop life, ends up running into a man from Ferris Air who ended up going insane and is rambling about the center and the mission to Mars. And Martian Manhunter decides, ooh, mission to Mars? I like Mars. I'm gonna sneak aboard the spacecraft because I don't want to be on Earth anymore because the KKK murdered someone and no one cares. But they didn't focus on that for more than one scene.
No, he just went to the Batcave, gave Batman all the information that he had on all the information he had, and told him he was disappointed in humanity. And Batman said, okay, yeah, fine.
Although that is an interesting Batman scene. It's one of the only Batman scenes in the movie. Earlier in the scene where Batman saved a child from being burned to death by a cult, the child was scared of Batman because of his Golden Age experience with the purple gloves that only actually appeared in one issue of the comic, but it's still what everyone thinks Golden Age Batman looked like. But anyway, because of that, Batman gets a Robin and changes his costume to be less scary.
Yeah.
he becomes Silver Age Batman, even though his costume is still equally scary.
I mean, that's the thing about Batman is he's supposed to look scary to intimidate criminals.
But not to intimidate children.
And that is why he gets a Robin. I mean, that's the interesting thing about the Joker and the Batman. It's like, people hate bats, but Batman is the hero. People are, at least they're supposed to like clowns, because they're fun.
No one likes clowns, Riley.
That's why I said they're supposed to. That's their purpose, is to like them, you know? When it actually comes down to their existence, they fall into the uncanny valley, and are therefore, from an evolutionary, psychologically perspective, fucking horrifying.
Yeah, just like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Exactly. But the point of clowns is to make you laugh, but the Joker is the villain. Batman is supposed to look scary, but it is an interesting scene how he gets a Robin, gets a new change of costume, in order to be more appealing to the kiddies.
Anyway, we finally get intersection from the two heroes that this film cares about. Martian Manhunter tries to sneak aboard the spaceship going to Mars, and Agent Faraday stops him, and Martian Manhunter has to get off the ship to save Faraday from being killed by the fire from the rocket. But the rocket goes off. It's flying to Mars. Also, it has like a shitload of nukes on it. Because it's the 50s and everyone was scared of everything. Hal doesn't like this and gets into a fight with Rick Flag. The ship blows up mid-air and Hal is saved by Superman.
Is Rick Flag killed in that scene?
I'm pretty sure. He was on a spaceship and then it went boom and he doesn't show up after that.
Yeah, he did die, didn't he?
And absolutely no one cried because does anyone like Rick Flag?
That's his one character trait, is he's just a dick. It's just a matter of who is he a dick for in this particular context. Amanda Waller or this Faraday guy. It's at this point that Ferris Air has captured the Martian Manhunter. When Superman saves Hal Jordan, he, through prison glass, sees Martian Manhunter. Him and Faraday also have a pretty interesting interaction about how they're afraid of this alien because he doesn't look human. But Superman's like, well, I'm an alien, but you like me because I look like I'm a human. So that's, again, that was a very interesting interaction. Again, there's solid moments in this and solid ideas brought up, but beyond that, they're just not explored at all beyond that.
Hey, speaking of things that aren't explored beyond that, you might notice we've been talking about Hal Jordan, not Green Lantern.
Oh, yeah.
Because at this point, right before the film's climax, he still isn't Green Lantern, which is interesting.
Right.
But don't worry, right after the spaceship explosion, Abin Sur gives him the ring so he can be Green Lantern now. Okie doke.
It was weird to me because it's like he was like attacked by a giant green light, and in the back of my head I know I'm like, okay, this is the scene, but it's kind of weird because it kind of makes you think like, ooh, he's under attack, but by who? But no, it's a green light picks up the couch he's sitting on and like moves him to where Abin Sur, the Green Lantern who had the ring before him, who is like allegedly the greatest Green Lantern to have ever existed, and now Hal Jordan has to live up to that legacy because reasons. So he gets the Green Lantern ring and gets the lowdown, and despite the fact that he has the Green Lantern ring, he still doesn't use it. He doesn't actually become Green Lantern and start using the ring until 64 minutes into this 75-minute movie.
Honestly, I'm surprised it's so early. I was thinking you'd say like 70.
75 including the credits.
Okay, fair enough. But anyway, remember when Wonder Woman was in this movie? She's just been chilling on Themyscira. Oh shit! Giant floating Death Island with psychic powers and lasers that can create dinosaurs. It destroys Themyscira. And she makes it to the US and warns the heroes, right as the giant dinosaur island shows up to destroy everything. We have a climax. Our plot lines are kind of converging now.
You covered a lot of time there, and I have a lot to say about that. Just breaking it down. We pick up with Wonder Woman on Themyscira. She's sparring with another soul warrior who's telling her that there's a lot of civil unrest in Themyscira. A lot of the women believe that she is not fit to be their ruler anymore. again, it's like, oh, so there's political distrust of Wonder Woman on Themyscira. Okay, that's cool. Never brought up again. Never brought up before. That's the first and last time we hear about that. Then she's attacked by the Centaur. And can I just say, I hate the Centaur as a villain.
Ooh.
There is no character with him. It's just a giant floating island that shoots dinosaurs. Like, that's stupid.
I do like a few times throughout the film, it takes control of people's minds and speak through them. That's creepy. And the dinosaurs coming out of its flesh and flying away. Okay, that's interesting. And when Tal goes inside it, it's like a galaxy inside this island. That's interesting. There's some interesting ideas with it, but at the end of the day, it's just an island that wants to wipe out humanity that the Justice League fights. It's not much of a character.
Not at all.
And even Keith David's very good performance as it is not enough to make it a good villain.
Exactly.
It's an island that they need to blow up, not a character.
He also plays the guy reading the book that killed himself in the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I went into it with that scene. It's like, okay, Keith David is voicing the villain. That's awesome. Keith David is a great actor, a great voice actor. But there's just no character whatsoever. It's just a generic ball in the sky that can shoot lasers. And I'm also left with this feeling of like, how fucking hard is it to make a Justice League film with a good villain? Like, you got this one with the piece of shit Centaur, and then you got the live action Justice League movie with no one gives a shit Steppenwolf. Like, you understand that there is such a thing as Brainiac, right? Brainiac is a great Justice League villain. He's a great just villain in general. And he has not made a live action appearance in a movie apart from that Krypton show that got canceled after 2 seasons. And probably Smallville. I don't know. I never watched any of those. But it's like, I don't know. Like, how hard is it to choose a good DC villain to be the villain of your Justice League movie, you know? It's like, Centaur is shit. Steppenwolf is generic as fuck.
The next animated Justice League movie they made after this one, Crisis on Two Earths, that had one of my favorite villains in the comic book movie ever. That had Owlman, so they eventually learned.
I'm just saying, it seems to me like, and again, this is just 2 movies, but it's like, I mean, seriously, how hard is it to go with a good DC villain for a movie, you know? Like, DC has some great villains. One of the arguments why people say DC is better than Marvel is because they have better villains. It's like, well, why aren't they have any good villains in fucking Justice League, you know? And I get, you're right, I have seen clips of Owlman. He's a great villain. Darkseid is great. Brainiac is great. It's just, there's so many possibilities, and they go with a CGI gray dude and a giant floating island with no personality and no character or development whatsoever. Sorry, my rant is over now. I've been holding on that one the last hour.
So we get Superman fighting dinosaurs as the Spectre is arriving at Florida.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, it's the place in America that will be destroyed by a dinosaur island. Superman beats up a big pterodactyl and then gets absolutely bodied by the Centaur and falls in the ocean and is out of commission for the rest of the film.
Yeah, like a good quarter to a third of the movie, Superman is presumed dead. He got killed. He got boned by that island.
But anyway, Superman's out of the picture. I guess McCarthyism is over because Faraday assembles all the world's heroes and lets Martian Manhunter go because they play chess against each other off screen. And all of the Earth's heroes assemble. You know, all these great heroes who you love throughout this film, like Green Arrow and Adam Strange and the Blackhawks. Remember those guys?
Yeah.
Who appeared before?
Right, exactly.
They assemble to fight the Centaur, and there's a big speech about how political beliefs and who you are don't matter, and how I guess McCarthyism isn't a thing anymore as they go to fight the villain. And that was not earned or built up at all.
No, not at all.
The film puts up good ideas but doesn't execute them. The Red Scare, how it affects superheroes, that's good. But you didn't go into that except for the government wants to arrest Flash, and then it just is solved because Dinosaur Island.
Like I said earlier, like Superman has a very interesting monologue that isn't earned at all. He's taking a moral stance against government persecution. Like he's basically saying what he's learned from his character arc thus far in the movie. But the problem is we haven't seen that because he's been pushed to the side like a bitch.
So the plan to take out the Spectre, the Center, different villain. Although Spectre is kind of related because it's a Hal Jordan focused movie. The plan to take out the Center I actually think is really interesting. They're going to do a big air raid on the island to distract it, and then Flash is going to run onto it and destroy it. And how are they going to destroy it? Well, you see, Ray Palmer, the Atom, he exists in this movie. Never appeared before. I think he got a cameo in, like, a magazine that was shown. He wasn't in the film before this. He has a shrink ray that doesn't work and makes things explode. And Flash is going to run onto the Center and use the shrink ray to blow it up.
The Atom hasn't figured out how to make his shrinking tech stable yet.
And that would be a great twist if you set up early on that, this famous hero is having trouble figuring out his powers and it's making things explode. And you expect the ending to have him figure out how his powers work and save the day. No. He uses the fact that he accidentally blows stuff up to his advantage. That would work if that wasn't the first scene to feature Ray Palmer.
And it is interesting how this film does in that way use the strengths and weaknesses of the Justice League members to their advantage. This movie did that, and the live-action Suicide Squad movie couldn't.
I guess.
Why the hell does Killer Croc have to convince the soldiers to let him tag along with them to plant the bomb in the sewer? Shitty writing. But having Ray Palmer, it's like, okay, Wonder Woman is unconscious.
Superman is underwater.
Who else we got here? Fucking Green Arrow? How about you say a line or two? No? Okay.
No, you're mute? Okay.
Yeah, but it's like the Atom's technology isn't stable yet, but they use it to their advantage, and they let the Flash be the one to use it to destroy it. And again, it is an interesting plan, but like you said, not built up at all.
So the climax of this film, it gives us 3 cool moments for the 3 heroes who have really had any screen time. First off, Martian Manhunter's friend, I guess, King Faraday, sacrifices himself by jumping into the mouth of a T-Rex and blowing it up with a ton of grenades. And then Martian Manhunter freaks out and just smashes a bunch of dinosaurs. That's pretty cool.
Martian Manhunter, before that scene, he kind of took a page from what Batman was doing at this time, and he gave himself a more family-friendly look because he's a shapeshifter.
Yeah, and can I say something?
What was that?
I hate how Martian Manhunter looks in this movie. Like, he's normally given red eyes, and he has realistic human eyes. I mean, they're kind of yellow, but he has normal eyes in this movie, and it just feels off-putting. Give him the red eyes. Also, Green Lantern and his other pilot friend, they fly into the island, and it's really trippy in there, and blood goo starts consuming their planes, and then Hal Jordan finally whips out the Green Lantern ring, and he becomes Green Lantern and flies out surrounded by a force field, which is a pretty cool scene.
Yeah.
Credit where credit is due. That is cool. And finally accepting his powers and using them to save his friend. Except this is the first time he's interacted with the powers. Like, if there was a struggle with him not wanting to use the ring, that would have been cool, but no.
Before the climax, he was talking with Carol, and basically his character arc and his whole motivation is, like we mentioned earlier, Hal mentioned that he's a pacifist. So presumably the act of slitting that guy's throat in the trench probably fucked him up, and that's what sent him to the psych ward for a little bit. She mentioned how he didn't fire on the enemy pilots. He just tricked them into crashing into each other. What he's been struggling with the entire movie is whether or not it's justified to call him a hero, or is he a coward? He learned how to kill, not because it was the right thing to do, but just to survive, is what he said, essentially. Overall, I'd say that was at least a semi-well-done character arc. It's 64 minutes into a 75-minute movie. and he finally, just now, uses the Green Lantern ring.
Yeah, I really wanted this movie to be better because when I heard the concept of it, it sounded really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, the book version won awards. I honestly think I'm going to check it out
Yeah, same.
after we finish recording this because it sounds really good. But this film, it has good ideas going for it and it doesn't execute any of them good. It's 75 minutes. It's trying to do this grand story with a dozen characters all tied together with arcs, and it doesn't give any of them the time they need.
Right. The live-action Justice League film from 2017 was 2 hours long, and that still wasn't enough time to properly introduce not even all the Justice League, just 6 of the Justice League members. Green Lantern's not even in it. This movie is like 45 minutes shorter than that, and has equally as many members of the Justice League. It's like 6 minus the 7th. So yeah, overall, there's just not enough time to properly develop all these characters. And credit where credit's due, they gave the bulk of the development to the characters that needed it, at least for the mainstream. Everyone knows Batman's origin. Everybody knows Superman's origin. Not so much Wonder Woman, Flash, and Aquaman, but people at least know who they are. I would argue that the least popular members of the Justice League, not including all the decades of jokes about Aquaman, are Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern. And that sucks because they are arguably two of my top tier favorite DC heroes. But again, this just overall not done super well in this film. But Green Lantern and his friend Ace take out the island from the inside out. Flash uses the Atom's technology to shrink the island into basically becoming unstable and therefore exploding.
Green Lantern picks up the island and chucks it into space with his ring, which is cool.
And that was a cool scene.
And then Aquaman shows up carrying Superman's unconscious body.
Yeah.
Because he's in this movie, I guess. He's played by our favorite actor, Alan Ritchson. Hey, did you know that he was in an episode of American Idol? He tried out for that.
I'm sure he did.
He was in an episode of Hawaii Five-0. This is the show's new segment. Let's talk about Alan Ritchson, because he's our favorite actor, apparently. Holy shit, you know that episode, Hitchcock and Scully, Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
Yeah.
and it opens with flashback to the 80s when Hitchcock and Scully were
in their prime.
Were like cool buff guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played young Scully. Alan Ritchson is the best actor.
Exactly. I mean, this guy is top tier, you know? If you've seen Blood Drive, this is the second time I'm mentioning it this episode. In all seriousness, I do really like the show Blood Drive. Yeah, so Wonder Woman wakes up from her coma. Green Arrow is flying a plane. It's all over the place. And it is interesting. Where does that final battle take place? Just off the coast of Florida?
Yeah, I believe so. They say Cape Canaveral, which is kind of fitting because of the space themes.
I mean, no offense to if anyone listening to this is in Florida. We can do without Florida, you know? No, I'm kidding. But side note, I did...
Ding. I've been watching the clock. We just reached 75 minutes. We've been talking about this film longer than the film is because it's so short and doesn't have any time to go over anything.
I'm glad.
I mean, we'll definitely edit this down because we've had some tech issues that caused us to stop for stuff. But seriously, this is not... This film needed to be double its length.
At least that.
It's an adaptation of a 400-page book.
I mean, even the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel adaptation was 2 movies long. Those are great, by the way. We should talk about those soon. At least they allowed that story enough breathing room to properly be told and fleshed out. But anyway, getting back to how Florida sucks.
You're really mean in this episode, I've noticed.
Yeah. I'm having a good time, Casey.
You've gone evil, man.
Yeah, I did a TikTok that was part of a trend that was like, Google Florida man and then your birthday and then show what came up. And I did that August 20th. It was a news article that was written, Florida man arrested for castrating a man with a rusty knife or something like that. Like, what?
Let's see, mine is Florida man groped Princess at Magic Kingdom.
Of course. Oh, let me look at Florida Man.
So we've gone completely off track.
Let's see. Hold up. Florida man arrested for botched castration on another man he met on eunuch fetish website.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I would have been okay if the center blowed that shit up.
So what about this film haven't we said?
Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman were fighting a bunch of dinosaurs. Flash destroyed the island. Green Lantern, in an interesting scene, he used his newfound power to fully engulf the island and take it up to space while the island was talking with him psychically, saying like, you don't have the will to do this, you're a coward. And again, that fits very well with the theme of the film that's been established, but also the theme of Green Lantern, because his power is derived from his will. And the idea that this man is struggling with cowardice and fear and his identity, that is a really interesting arc for this. It's maybe not the best well fleshed out in this film, but again, it's very interesting. And through the sheer power of will, is able to lift the island and take it to space where it explodes. And they save the day, all the dinosaurs died. Like you said, Aquaman shows up to give one line with Superman who's still alive. Jimmy Olsen takes the photo of all the heroes that barely got any screen time in this movie. And then the last part of this film is a montage of all the events that are to come, basically saying like what's to come in the Silver Age. It shows you Lex Luthor and LexCorp. It also shows you the Teen Titans and Rick Flag Jr. because apparently he had a son now. And basically how the Justice League would continue to go on and be the heroes of tomorrow and stuff like that. Interestingly, though, in that montage, there was a shot of a little boy wearing like a football jersey, reading a book about John Wilson, the African-American hero that fought the KKK and died earlier in the film, but no one cared. The kid is African-American. What's interesting, I actually looked into that because I noticed something. His jersey says Irons on it. That character is a young Steel.
Wow, that would have really had an impact if his father was, an actual character and not just described briefly in a news story.
I mean, I don't know if it was his father. It could have been. I don't know. But his name is John Henry Irons. And he was an African-American kid being inspired by an African-American superhero. And that kid will eventually go on to become Steel, one of the Supermen in the Reign of the Supermen era. He would eventually go on to become a superhero. That was interesting. I mean, the idea that we kind of talked about this in our Captain America 1990 review, like the idea of people being inspired by heroes. And it's interesting, but again, all of that I just talked about, that's not explicitly shown in the movie. It's just a kid wearing a football jersey, and I'm gathering all this meaning from it. And again, they're trusting the audience to gather all this information, and that's what a good film does. It's not trying to hold your hand and show you, this is exactly what's happening, word for word, here's all this exposition. But you gotta still give us something that sticks. Don't show us a subplot in a movie and then abandon it the next scene, and it never shows up ever again. I don't know, I thought that montage was a little interesting, as interesting as this story could have been.
And over it, we get the famous speech from JFK where the film gets its title from. I don't have anything else to say about this film. We've harped on it. There's great ideas. None of them are executed good.
Like we've been constantly talking about throughout this film, it's only 75 minutes. It has so many characters that it has to set up, and 75 minutes just is not enough time, even for an animated film. It's rushed, it jumps around a lot. It was nice at first for the film to mainly focus on Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter, but as the film went on, it's like, okay, they're completely sidelining Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman.
Even the Flash, he's supposed to be prominent in this one, but no, he isn't either.
Really, this film isn't a Justice League movie. It really should be called Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter watches TV, and also the Flash is here for a scene or two. But, that's really what this movie should have been called. It's not really a Justice League movie, because Batman barely in it. Wonder Woman, barely in it. Superman, barely in it. Aquaman has one single line. They didn't give it enough time to let the story breathe and evolve. Shitty villain. I really did not like it. Like, what's up with the cult that's all around the world? That was interesting. Never talked about ever again after they mentioned it. Why is it an island? Why are there dinosaurs being created on it? What's up with the children's book? How is any of this relevant? It's just mentioned and dropped immediately. And there is no character for the villain. There's no development. It's just a generic ball in the sky that can shoot a laser. And there's just nothing to it. Superman is dead for a quarter of it and absent for about the other half. Superman has a character arc that happens off screen. They try to play it off like it's this huge focal point of the movie, of the story, and maybe it is in the graphic novel, but the fact that he's fighting political corruption and government persecution, that's interesting. The idea that Superman, who's always depicted as being the guy who sides with the government, being the guy who's like, no, the government is wrong, that's interesting, but it's not fleshed out well in this film. The idea that there's potential political insurrection in Themyscira to overthrow Wonder Woman, that's interesting, but that's only in one scene.
Holy crap, you know what I just realized?
What's that?
None of the Golden Age heroes ever appear in this movie.
Not at all.
Which is a movie partially about them being forced into hiding. They have a frame in the intro.
That is interesting, having how the Red Scare and McCarthyism and the Korean War, how all of that affected superheroes. Like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of Watchmen vibes. The point of Watchmen is, what are the ethics of the government in the 50s and 60s having access to literal gods at their military disposal, you know? How all of that affects the Justice League. Like, the Justice League banding together could be an interesting story, but you take that and set it in a time of McCarthyism and the Red Scare in a post-Korean War America. That's a really interesting angle to take it, but it's just so vaguely explored. Like, there's an offhanded political comment here and there. Beyond that, there's nothing. It thinks it's a lot more political and a lot more intelligent than it actually is. It does do some interesting things and offer some interesting moments and mature themes. There's a lot about war, violence, and oppression. It's interesting, but overall it's just not very well executed in this movie. A lot of the themes just were not fleshed out. I will say this, I think it's better than Justice League War, if that's what you're gauging it by. I haven't seen Justice League War for a while, but I thought War was so generic and so sloppy.
I mean, the difference between this one and Justice League War is that Justice League War aims like 2 feet off the ground and fails. This film aims for the stars, and it crashes down to the same place, but it aimed higher.
Well, and that's my thing personally. I always prefer a big swing and a miss as opposed to something that's just kind of mediocre and trying to be mediocre, you know? Like something that tried to go big or go home and ended up going home, like failing miserably. Like, I prefer that over something that's just like, oh, you know, whatever, forgettable.
Are you ready to give scores?
Honestly, it opens up a lot of interesting possibilities for the Justice League and for these characters. Has a lot of interesting themes, a lot of interesting character moments, but overall, it just fails miserably at telling them. I'm trying to be as light on it. Keep in mind, because this was a movie intended for children, but at the same time, that's no reason to pander to them anyway. And it's like, again, there's a lot of moments that aren't for kids, so it's like, who the hell is this movie for? Overall, this movie was okay in that I will never watch it again, and I'm probably going to forget about it in a few days. So overall, I'm probably going to give it a 4 out of 10.
Wow. 8. It has some good scenes. There are a lot of really good ideas in it. It's well acted. The animation is passable, but it doesn't hit the mark. It aims high and it does not reach it.
And I think it should be worth reminding everybody that if this is your first episode, first of all, thank you for watching. I recommend you watch the rest of our other videos. They're really great. I think it's also worth noting that I'm a bit harsher rater than Casey is.
I'm the generous one.
I'm the guy that enjoys taking your heart and your soul and just crushing it and feeling it between my fingers as it dies. It's a really dark note to leave this kids movie.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
a really
edgelords.
It's a really dark thing to leave this movie review of a kid's animation, but
Sure, you edgelord talking about comic books online. Yeah, you're gonna crush someone's heart.
But hey, this movie started with a suicide, so I figured it was fitting to end it. You can all find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all of my short films and video essays. Please check it out and give me a subscribe, and don't forget to hit the like button. You can all find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe. On TikTok, you can check out all of my comedy content, and on Instagram, you can check out all the updates on my projects that are in my world.
You can find me on Twitter at JarmesCasey, JarmesCascy. You can find my writings and game design and other work at caseyjarms.wordpress.com. We'll be back next week where we're going to be going into a classic film franchise that I have never watched a film from before. We're going to be watching a James Bond movie, the original James Bond movie, Dr. No, starring Sean Connery.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
We'll be back next week, assuming we just don't get distracted again by going through Alan Ritchson's IMDb page. He's been in a lot of really good stuff. He's an underrated actor. Well, not really. He's
okay.
He's okay, but he's been in things that are good. Well, he's been in things that I've watched.
God bless that man.
Why the fuck did we spend 10 minutes talking about Alan Ritchson? He's not in this movie. He has one line.
Because why not?
As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it.